Remember the head of a third world country, or for that matter the head of any country, talking as openly about his frustrations as did the leader of Ghana when we were there a few weeks ago. You might remember Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings from the story we did about him 5 years ago. This African superstar was a revolutionary who had seized power because he was fed up with the incompetence and corruption in his country. But then when his buddies in Libya and the Soviet Union refused to give him the aid he asked for, he turned to the West for help. Rawlings not only persuaded the International Monetary Fund, that bastion of free markets, to give him a loan, but now he has the IMF calling him a role model for all of Africa. That was enough to send us back to Ghana for a second look. From a distance, he looked like the Rawlings we remembered, the swaggering flight lieutenant who toppled a government in just a few hours. Yet it turns out Jerry Rawlings has changed. It's one thing to seize power in the third world, quite another to govern a small African country when you're dependent on aid from the big countries, and the big countries make the rules.
Africa finds herself in a catch-22 situation, you see. She better watch what she says here and there, or else you don't get that aid or that assistance, etc., etc. What kind of blackmail is this? But this is another fact of the things you people don't know and don't see. And it's a painful thing for me sitting here to have to be making such admissions. But these are some of the truths, the hard facts, my dear. You know?
The hard facts are, 5 years ago, Rawlings, the idealistic revolutionary, thought Ghana would take charge of her own destiny. His countrymen would work hard and catch up with the West in record time. Now, Rawlings, the weary head of state, is adjusting to reality.
Who will do it anyway? Who will do the work? You see what I mean?
You thought you were going to steer a ship, and instead you're just riding the waves?
Yeah. Just battling against one wave after the other. Never ending, so it seems.
Yet this is the man the International Monetary Fund celebrates as a role model for all of Africa. The man who got the IMF loans because he made his countrymen swallow some bitter medicine, the IMF rules. Salaries were cut, prices rose, the currency was devalued. The people were told to be patient.
How is it you had the nerve to go to the IMF when other African countries in dire shape didn't think they could take that chance?
I knew it would create problems for us, you know, but did we have any other alternative? Whether it was a question of the IMF or World Bank or the Soviet Union didn't really make any difference. We were suffering from a very serious economic malaise, and we needed to do something about it. And wherever we could get some very basic resources from, you know, to start rejuvenating the national infrastructure, to start rejuvenating, you know, the national economy.
And it doesn't take long to see just how much things have changed. 5 years ago, you couldn't find a glass of beer. Today, it's easy, about $1 a mug. And the last time we were here, all you could get for lunch was a little chicken and rice. Because of the wild currency and inflation, it cost about $100 a person. Today, this lunch costs about $3 a person, and you can order just about anything you want.
Today, there are traffic jams, and some of those cars are Mercedes. 5 years ago, people didn't drive much because you had to wait so long in the fuel line. And today there's a brand new East German train which takes customers to the market at Kumasi, where the boisterous market mammies, that's what they call them in Ghana, get ready to bargain and trade. 5 years ago, food in this market was so scarce, many of the people we see here were starving. Not only is the market bustling, but the gold mines are working again. Ghana has the richest reserve in all of Africa. Cocoa, that staple of the Ghanan economy, is back in production at twice the levels it was before. It's all part of the rising economic tide in Ghana. The problem is, in a poor country, a rising tide doesn't lift many boats.
People still don't have money in their pockets to buy the things that are now in the stores.
Yeah, that's true.
Or else I'll hold you responsible. Huh?
And that's why Jerry Rawlings is so angry and disappointed. 5 years ago, when he agreed to the IMF plan, he thought Western investors would rush in to help him raise the standard of living, with jobs for his people and a chance to buy Western technology at low prices. But it didn't happen, and now he thinks the big countries will only give enough to keep African countries on a leash, not enough to help a country like Ghana catch up.
Okay. Let's see something better next year. Probably the end of this year. Thank you very much. Yeah. So if at the end of the day I have a meal to eat, 3 meals, you think I can go to sleep and feel at ease with the world? Is that what happens to you? You know? Is that what happens to Reagan, to the rest of you people in the US, in other parts of Europe? Maybe I should be asking the same question of Gorbachev too. Some of you are in a position to do something about it.
Rawlings lives in a place that looks as melancholy as his mood these days. A national monument called the Castle, where he has 2 small, run-down rooms near his office. Once a week, he visits his wife and 4 children at their suburban home nearby. He seems less a prince than a prisoner.
That was very simple.
And this complex man is made even more so by his mixed blood. Rawlings is the only half-black, half-white leader of an African nation. His father was Scottish, his mother Ghanaian. His father abandoned his black family and went back to Scotland. And when Rawlings went there to meet him, his father refused.
Oh, I grew up under very tough conditions.
You mean your father left?
My mother is the only one, you know. Some of you are in a position to do something about it.
Rawlings lives in a place that looks as melancholy as his mood these days. A national monument called the Castle, where he has 2 small, run-down rooms near his office. Once a week, he visits his wife and 4 children at their suburban home nearby. He seems less a prince than a prisoner.
That was very simple.
And this complex man is made even more so by his mixed blood. Rawlings is the only half-black, half-white leader of an African nation. His father was Scottish, his mother Ghanaian. His father abandoned his black family and went back to Scotland. And when Rawlings went there to meet him, his father refused.
Oh, I grew up under very tough conditions.
You mean your father left?
My mother is the only one, you know, who looked after us, you know, my brother and I. And it wasn't easy on her, you see.
And then when you went to see your father?
Oh, it wasn't a pleasant experience, but that's not important.
He didn't want to acknowledge it? Didn't want to acknowledge his son? That has to be important. Doesn't it?
Well, at least what's important is I will not do the same thing, and I wouldn't want to see anybody go through the same kind of neglect.
We followed the restless flight lieutenant 8 hours up a dirt road into a region called the Afram Plains. If the farmers here could only modernize, it could be one of the great bread baskets in Africa.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Rawlings attended a ceremony celebrating a $4 million gift of tractors from the UN Food Organization.
I saw it the other day at the ceremony. You sit with your head in your hands a lot. What is that? Fatigue? Worry? Regret?
If I didn't do that, I suppose you wouldn't feel the man had a burden on his shoulders. If I am impatient, if I am unhappy, if you're getting that impression, it's probably because I know how much more. I keep on saying that we're capable of achieving, you know. But how to mobilize it, how to get it organized, you know, under team leadership to bring out the best in our people.
People who still don't know how to take care of what they get. So talking to them, Rawlings was full of fire, like the old days. A preacher, a scold.
Brand new tractors, brand new tractors. I'd like to come here in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years' time and see how many of these tractors will still be on road or, beg your pardon, on the farms, functioning. What's going to be the lifespan of this expensive machine?
Seeing him this way reminded us of the way he looked 5 years ago when we attended a similar ceremony with him. This was what we saw back then.
I couldn't help but notice that in the boot you were wearing, in the top of the boot, you had a gun. Then, just a day ago, we looked at your boot again, and lo and behold, in the place of a gun was a writing pen.
Oh,
Now, is there symbolism here? What are we to make of this? I mean, is this the pen mightier than the gun?
Geez, I appreciate what you're making of it. No, they complement one another. Don't make that mistake.
But Rawlings also used to say that Ghana and democracy complemented each other, that democracy would cure his country's rampant corruption. Now, he says, democracy must wait.
Some of the students we talked to said, he's a soft dictator. A dictator, but a soft dictator. Fair?
If I were, I wouldn't be as frustrated as I am.
But will people have a right to vote you out? And the party out?
I'm saying that we can vote people in and out. Personalities, okay? But my dear, what we need to do in this country is to establish a situation where even if it was the devil who should come and sit on top of us in Ghana, by virtue of certain procedures, certain practices, the devil cannot get away with doing whatever he wants. He would necessarily have to do what the people expect of him. I don't know if you appreciate what I'm talking about. So that Rawlings being here or out is not really important.
So the 5 years have taught Jerry Rawlings a melancholy lesson, that one man cannot change things overnight, that his country is destined to remain far behind. He's struggling with an African version of that old Shakespearean problem. Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown, especially if you grabbed the crown and placed it on yourself.
Maybe I have no right to be asking every American citizen, I mean, how do you feel with this degree of luxury as you look at your environment yourself, you know? And you're seeing so many hundreds, thousands of people dying away from deprivation. And I'm sitting here, there's nothing I can do to help them.
You know the phrase burned out?
I see.
Do you ever feel it?
Not exactly burned out, but it's like clawing in the dark, looking for a way of dealing with some of the global problems that have reduced Africa in a way to this kind of situation. I don't want to be pushed onto venting my feelings. You know, it may not be politically right to go too far. But it's painful, madame. You know, sitting so helpless. So helpless. Huh?